I know we've been talking a little about sports. I want to continue a bit about sports because the NFL draft was this week. And for the listeners out there, the NFL draft is where you line up all the NFL teams and they're drafting guys out of college. And typically there's this thing called the combine where everyone gets together and runs and sprints and they measure everybody. And there are what's called pro days where universities invite the scouts to the university and they see the players up close. None of those things happened this year because of COVID and the season was curtailed. So it was a bit of a wild card draft. So you watched it live. I read about it in the morning out here in Europe. What was your sort of big takeaways for listeners out there to kind of dig into if they're getting interested in the NFL?
Yeah, so I think the story of the draft coming in was definitely what's going to happen with these quarterbacks. Quarterbacks. I think the number one, everyone knew, okay, Trevor Lawrence going number one. Yep. Number two, it was pretty obviously Zach Wilson was going to be locked in at number two, which is kind of funny to me because it's one of these things where the NFL draft gets weird because I think as soon as the season ended, it's like, okay, Trevor Lawrence is one, Justin Fields is number two. And then stuff happens. I don't know. And it's like, oh, Justin Fields is falling. Zach Wilson's going up the board. And Trey Lance, I think his name's going to board. I'm like, who are these people? Who are these people that I've never heard of at all during the season that magically now are rising up? So I think the first thing everyone's saying, who are the Niners going to pick up? And they got that Trey Lance dude. And it was like, oh, they didn't trade up to get Mac Jones. This is crazy. So after that, it was just, when's the next QB going? When's the next QB? So after, I think it was like Detroit didn't pick a quarterback, where me and my buddy were watching, we're like, trade's about to happen because someone's going to trade up to get these QBs. So I was glad to see Justin Fields go like 11th and maybe hopefully the Bears do it to him. The Patriots just got the most Patriots thing, did nothing. I know. End up with one of these quarterbacks. I'm like, God damn it, Belichick and them. This is nuts. So that was great. And to me, it was really a story about really quarterbacks. And other than that, it was, what guys are getting drafted a little lower because they opted out of the 2020 season. So they're, I forgot one of the first linebacker. He went lower and was like, he didn't play and that probably made him fall. I'm like, well, you saw him the year before. I doubt he's any slower or fatter. Like you got you can go weigh him, right? And, but he's still just as good probably as he was the year before. So to me, that was the real thing. And it was actually kind of snappy. I was like, okay, it's, only 10 minutes. And after we got through all the quarterbacks and trades and people trading back, it was just like, boom, boom, boom. Because people knew who they wanted to draft. They traded back like, we can get the same guy, more assets. And funny enough, while we were watching that, I'm watching the draft and your boy's fro got a little tangled up. So it's literally 3 hours of watching the draft. And I'm picking out the fro. That's why I got these little poofs right now. I was too lazy to wash and deep condition my hair. So I still got little poofies to do that later. So draft and picking out the hair. That was my last night, dog.
Dude, on these quarterbacks. So what I find interesting too, one, the point you made, which is the season ends. There's no pro day. There's no combine. You think the information that we have on these people is in the can, so to speak, and yet you see all this shuffling. The second thing you point out, which is this Zach Wilson, the BYU quarterback, and Trey Lance, this North Dakota State, they've basically played one full season of college football, and they didn't play one game against Power 5 conferences. Neither guy. So this Zach Wilson is going to go from Provo, Utah, playing against non-Power 5 to New York City and be the franchise quarterback of the New York Jets. To me, that strikes me as a massive transition. Trey Lance is going to go from North Dakota State playing effectively one season. And before this year, neither guy were that high on the radar. If you were drafting, would you go, all else equal, would you go for these 19, 20? Now, the Wilson's not the 19 or 20, but Lance is, but inexperienced, young, raw, potential types? Or would you go with this Mac Jones, Alabama, played in the pro style offense, more of a known quantity, but ultimately less athletic upside?
I mean, I guess it depends just, what is your coaching philosophy or what is your time horizon, right? If you're like, I might get fired within 2 years, you're like, I need someone who can play right now. Like, I don't necessarily have time to teach up this kid. So I think very much that, but it's, what are we aiming for, right? It's almost like, to me, a stock investment or investing in something. You're like, okay, I got, high beta on Trey Lance. You're like, all right, this guy might be a steal. And we got freaking Pat Mahomes, but bigger,
Mm.
or we're going to trade him after a year or two. It's really those wide variants. And I think in general, drafting quarterbacks or how good a quarterback's going to be, NFL isn't very good at it. Teams in general aren't good. Like if we go back, like, hey, Josh Rosen was supposed to be a big deal. 1 year, Arizona's like, nope, you're out of here. I think he's like the number
Miami's
8
like, nope.
Yeah, like now maybe he's the third string quarterback for somebody. So yeah, I think inexact science, and it's one of your what do we believe in? What type of shot are we willing to take? And if you're the Niners, if you're Shanahan, Trey Lance has to be your guy because you gave up a lot of capital. Right?
Yeah.
And it's like Jimmy G, you got maybe half a season to 1 season, and you're out of here, dog, because we gave up too much to not play this kid.
Honestly, where my head is at is, one, I fully agree with you. If you make that kind of big bet, I respect because your job is on the line. On the other hand, I've seen GMs get a little risk loving. I read in The Athletic that 50% of quarterbacks drafted in the top 15 picks in the last 20 years or so had their contracts renewed or extended for the optional fifth year extension. And 50% didn't, which basically means 50% didn't work out. If you're not going to extend a rookie deal, you didn't like what you got. 50-50, to your point, isn't a great talent assessment. Here's my hypothesis. Would love to hear your insight on it. It's more mental than physical. All of these guys are physically capable of playing NFL quarterback, and all are probably physically capable of excelling at lower levels without pushing themselves to that mental extreme we talked about with Steph Curry. But only some and a certain subset will have that hunger to push themselves to be the best when they're already very good relative to their peer set. And they got them in the NFL. They happen to not be very good relative to their peer set, and they just can't push that limit. So I think, to me, I'd be evaluating more psychologically, not Wonderlic IQ nonsense. I'm talking about that perseverance. That would you if you're camping and there's 20 people and shit goes haywire, you have that sense of like, who would I want in charge? And I want to think of them, like, even if they don't know what's going on, because they have that capacity to lead, which I think is honestly something that you don't see in everyone. How do you feel about that? You agree with my hypothesis, or you think, hey, I don't know, if you're Mahomes but taller and bigger, it's not going to matter your mental commitment as much as just the fact that you have that built-in physical aspect.
I mean, the physical tool sets, like guys in the extreme, right, obviously have an advantage, right? You got a cannon for an arm. That's just an asset, right? There's no, that's right. Yeah, you can throw it 10 yards or 5 miles an hour harder. That means you can hit an out route, less likely to have someone come underneath. So there's certainly that part. But kind of on the leadership, or I almost say self-belief. Like, it's one of those, you got to really believe in yourself, like, because it is going to be some terrible games. And you got to think, a lot of these guys haven't failed, right? You haven't hit failure before, and hitting failure for the first time and how you react to it is like a big thing to deal with in life, like consistently, right? Because we all try things, fail all over the place. And it's like, failure is part of life, but how do you deal with it after you fail is going to really dictate a lot of your outcomes in life. Because if you're kind of afraid of failing, when you hit failure for the first time, it's like, you're not going to try. Like, because when you're in NFL, you're like, you got to throw some balls that are crazy, like that high likelihood of failure or interception. Like, but you got to try to squeeze it in. And I think a lot of these guys that get in, times are hard. Oh my God, I got picked. I've had a few bad games, and then you can be in your head, like, some mental, like, what's going on? Do I know who I am? Life's hard, and that, I think, is what can be real tough. Because I don't know if you remember that guy the Bills had before, Josh Allen, like, Zimmerman or Timmerman, I don't know his name, but the guy threw like 4 picks or 5 picks in the first half.
Yeah,
and
Peterman.
Like, Peterman. That's what it was, Peterman. And that dude was done. He was broken. Yeah. Right? It's like, couldn't come back from that. And it's that's just one-off example of like, when it gets really bad, if you don't have a certain mental aspect, you're like, all right, well, I'm out. I can't deal with this.
I hear you. And what's interesting, what you're saying is that you're saying, look, vet these guys all you want. They haven't experienced failure, but they will. And how they respond to that is key. But how do you know that until they experience it? You can ask them all they want, and they're going to say, I pressed right through, because they've succeeded their whole life. They have no idea. I mean,